The Orion Tower Sound Studio, shut down since the 90s. Endless racks of reel-to-reel tapes line the climate-controlled walls. In the center, a massive vintage mixing console sits under a single dusty work lamp. The original sound engineers all quit within a month of each other, citing auditory hallucinations and paranoia. Now the few who've entered to salvage the old recordings report voices on tapes that were supposed to be blank, and the feeling of someone standing just behind them in the silent room. Tonight I'm digitizing the final batch of reels. My name's Leo. I'm a freelance audio archivist, and this was just another contract job. Orion Tower was a corporate monolith in the 80s, and they recorded everything: board meetings, training seminars, endless executive speeches. My task was simple: transfer it all to a secure digital server before the building was demolished next month. The pay was good because nobody wanted to work in the place alone, especially not overnight. The studio was on the 14th floor, a sealed, soundproofed vault in an otherwise empty skyscraper. The first 3 nights were tedious, but fine. Just the hum of the tape decks and the gentle hiss of decades-old audio. Then, on the 4th night, I heard the whisper. It was on a reel labeled Q4 Fiscal Strategy, 1987. I was halfway through, listening with one headphone cup off my ear, when I heard it. A voice, low and distorted, bleeding through the droning lecture about market shares. It didn't belong. It said, "Can you hear me now?" I stopped the tape, rewound, played it again. Nothing but the corporate presentation. I wrote it off as audio pareidolia, my brain making patterns from noise. I took a break, walked out into the hallway to get a drink from the water cooler. The floor was dead silent. When I came back, my chair was pushed neatly under the desk. I never push my chair in. I always just swivel it away and get up. I stood there for a full minute, staring at it. I was the only person in the building. Security had verified that when I came in. I shook it off. Fatigue. I pulled the chair back out and got to work. An hour later I needed a specific adapter from my kit, which I'd left on a shelf by the door. I got up and walked over. As I bent down to rummage through the bag, I heard a soft, shuffling step from the center of the room, right where I'd just been sitting. I froze, my back to the room. The sound was unmistakable. The slight scrape of a shoe on the industrial carpet. I didn't move. I just listened, whispering. All I could hear was my own heartbeat in my ears. After a count of 30, I slowly turned around. The room was empty. The chair was empty. But on the giant console, the VU meters for the main output channel, the one connected to my headphones, were flickering, gently bouncing, as if they were receiving a signal. But no tape was playing. I walked over, my skin crawling. I put my headphones on. A low, resonant tone was coming through, a pure 40 Hz sine wave. And beneath it, so faint I thought I was imagining it, was the sound of slow, rhythmic breathing. I ripped the headphones off. The meters dropped to 0. The tone stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than before. I decided I was done for the night. I started shutting down the equipment. As I powered off the main reel-to-reel deck, it whirred and ejected a tape. That was odd. I hadn't loaded that one. It was an unmarked reel, slate gray, no case. It must have been in the deck from the previous day. I went to put it back in its storage slot, but something made me stop. I looked at the blank label. A compulsion took over. I needed to know what was on it. Against every better judgment, I loaded the unmarked reel. I didn't put the headphones on. I just hit play and watched the meters. They jumped to life. I saw the needles reacting to sound, dancing to some kind of audio. But the studio monitors were off. The room was silent. I couldn't hear a thing. It was like watching a silent film of a screaming face. I had to hear it. I put one headphone cup to my ear. It was a recording of this room. I could hear the faint hum of the console, the specific squeak of my chair from yesterday. It was a recording of me working. I heard myself cough, mutter, sip my coffee. The recording was crystal clear, intimate, like the microphone was right next to me. But I never recorded myself. My blood went cold. The recording played on. I heard myself get up and walk to the door, just like I had an hour ago. Then on the tape, I heard the soft shuffling step from the center of the room, the one I'd heard in real life. On the recording, my own voice, confused, said hello. Then another voice answered. It was a dry, rasping whisper layered with that same 40 hertz tone. It came from everywhere on the stereo field. It said, "We're almost ready for you." I slammed the stop button. My hands were shaking. I ejected the unmarked reel and just held it. This was beyond a prank. This was a violation that made my stomach turn. Someone had been in here, recording me, and leaving the tapes for me to find. But the building was empty. Wired with a silent alarm, I called security. "Davis, it's Leo in the studio. I need you to do a full sweep of the 14th floor, right now." The guard's voice came back, crackling over the intercom. "Negative, Leo. You're the only keycard that's activated the elevator past the lobby tonight. My panel shows you're the only life sign on that whole floor." "That's not possible," I said, my voice tight. "It's what the system says." "You want me to come up?" "Yes, please." While I waited, I didn't move from the console. I stared at the unmarked reel. The feeling of being watched was so intense, it felt like a physical pressure on the back of my neck. To distract myself, I opened the spectral analysis software on my laptop. On a whim, I dragged the audio file from the unmarked reel into it. The spectrogram appeared, a waterfall of frequencies. The spoken words were clear, but above the human vocal range, in the ultrasonic band, was a pattern, a repeating, intricate series of spikes and valleys. It wasn't random. It was structured, like a barcode. I heard the distant ping of the elevator. Thank God. Security. I got up to meet Davis at the studio door. I glanced at the large, soundproofed window that looked into the darkened equipment room, a room I never used. As I passed it, I saw a reflection in the glass, not of the room behind me, a reflection of the studio itself. And in the reflection, sitting in my chair at the console, was a dark, shapeless silhouette. I spun around. The chair was empty. I looked back at the window. The reflection was gone. The door hissed open and Davis walked in, flashlight in hand. "All right, what's the problem?" I was babbling. I showed him the unmarked tape, told him about the sounds, the chair, the recording. He was a good guy, but his patience was thin. He did a walkthrough, shining his light into every corner. The equipment room, the vocal booth. "Leo, it's an old building. It makes noises. You've been staring at waveforms for 10 hours straight." He pointed at the reel. "Probably just an old test tape someone left. It has my voice on it, Davis. From today." He shrugged. "Maybe you recorded yourself and forgot. This place gets to people. The last crew quit for a reason." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Finish up. It's almost midnight." After he left, the silence felt even more hostile. I couldn't stay. I started packing my bag. My movements hurried, clumsy. I shoved the unmarked reel in with the others. As I zipped the bag, all the reel-to-reel decks in the room whirred to life at once. Their transport locks disengaged with a series of loud thunks. I watched, horrified, as every tape drive began spinning, playing nothing, their meters wildly swinging. Then the main studio lights went out. The only light was the single work lamp over the console, and from the giant, vintage studio monitors, which were definitely powered off, a voice erupted. It was a chorus of whispers, layered, men and women, all speaking at once, all saying the same thing: "Stay, finish the work." I grabbed my bag and ran. I didn't look back. I slammed my keycard against the elevator panel until the doors closed. I drove home in a blind panic. I thought that would be the end of it. I quit the job the next morning. They paid me for the work I'd done. I tried to forget about it. But a week later, I was setting up my home studio to edit a podcast. I was testing my new microphone. I recorded a test phrase, testing 1, 2, 3. I played it back. My voice came through clear. Then, after a 3-second pause, the whisper returned. It was in my own home, on my own system. It was clearer than ever. It wasn't on the tape. It was in the signal. It said, "We can hear you now." I sold all my audio equipment the next day. I took a job in data entry, something with no microphones, no speakers. But sometimes, when the office is too quiet, when the hum of the fluorescent lights hits a certain pitch, I'll hear it, the faintest echo of that tone, that 40 hertz hum. And I know, it wasn't about the building. It wasn't about the tapes. It was about listening and being listened to. Some doors, once you open them, you can never close. You just have to learn to live with the draft. See you in the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe.